You used to be able to
Yeah,
press it.
no, now you have to hold it. It is live, yes.
Well, there she comes.
Hi, Ellen. Oh, and Tony. Tony, our new commission member? Oh, on a form. That wouldn't surprise me, right? Let you set up.
Thanks. Sorry for being late.
Oh, you're fine. We were just saying you kind of have probably other priorities right now.
Yeah, it was a little hard to get out of the house. I didn't leave someone super happy.
All right, I will call to order the February 21st, 2024 Lake Elmo Parks Commission. And we can stand, rise, and state the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next order of business is to approve last month's agenda. Sorry, I did that last time too. Approve tonight's agenda. If we have a motion to approve this agenda. I don't know why I do that.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? That passes. Now we'll go to approving last month, January 17th, 2024 meeting minutes. And hopefully you've had a chance to read them over. Does anybody have any clarifications or corrections? If not, if somebody would like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the January 17th, 2023 meeting. 2024. Just reading that, that's a change. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for last month. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? That motion passes. We will go to public comment. It looks like do we have public comment here? Okay. Any other public comment? If not, we will move on to number 6, which is the SHIP grant.
Thank you. Commissioner, Council, Commissioners. In January, I applied for a grant through the Washington County. It's part of the Health Living grant through Washington County. It's also called the SHIP grant. This grant the city's applied for before, is about 3 years ago. But we applied for it for approximately $6,000. And we're looking for your recommendation to City Council to approve the funds that were received from that. So again, when I applied for that, it was for the purpose of adding 2 additional bike racks to the parks amenities. One would be at DeMontreville and the other one would be placed at Reed Park. Those 2 parks were chosen based off the current use of bikes in that area. When we received the grant 2 years ago, those 2 quadrants were also considered at that time, but that time 2 bike racks were placed at Sunfish Park, and then the other one is placed down by Ivywood. So this would be filling in those 2 gaps where that grant wasn't available at that time. So with that said, I'll take any questions on that or a motion to approve those funds.
And just to clarify, those are repair stations Does it
Correct.
include a rack, a bike rack?
Yeah, so it's a bike rack, it's a tall skinny rack, so the bike would sit up there,
Oh,
but it's a
okay.
repair station
For-
where
for
there's a bunch of
repairing
tools.
mostly.
that would
Thank
help
you
with
for
that.
that
Yep,
clarification.
It's same that matches, that's at Sunfish Park and at same ones?
correct, they're same style, yep.
And so the 6,000 per your estimate will cover everything?
Yeah, so that'll cover the stand, the purchasing of the stand, as well as a concrete base for those as well. So, we do have to rent, the concrete equipment to bring it in to make forms for the base, but also installing those there as well, so.
Commissioner Barrett, who's not here tonight, asked me to relay the question of whether signage could be placed on the Gateway Trail informing riders that there was a repair station there. So I just passed that on.
So we could ask, so we wouldn't put signage on the Gateway Trail itself, because that would be county's trail.
Right.
If we would add something to our park signs is like indicating that there's something there, that could be possibly done, that there's a
Yeah,
repair
because there's
station.
an access point,
Yeah, correct.
and you could put a sign on our property, on the
Yep.
city property.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions? If not, somebody want to make a motion? Quiet crew tonight.
Yeah, I'd move to make a motion to recommend to city council to accept the statewide health improvement partnership grant in the amount of $6,000.
Okay, do we have a second?
I can second that.
Okay, so we have a motion. Any further discussion or on that motion?
I appreciate you applying for that, Adam, and congrats on getting the grant. Yeah, I think it's a great testament to our city.
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of the start, this kind of use this as an example to kind of finish some of those open spaces that we had left, but in the future, it's definitely on health and wellness, so we can definitely use that in the future as well, or take this grant into consideration in the future as well, for maybe, like Vito had talked about, fitness equipment, or just maybe funds towards future park play equipment as well.
Okay. Well, I'll call the question on the motion motion was to recommend to city council to accept the statewide health improvement partnership grant in the amount of $6,000. All those in favor? Aye. Any noes? Is it none of those? No abstentions, that passes. And so we're on to number 7, which is the Lake Elmo baseball donation request.
Yeah, so last month, we heard from 2 individuals from the Lake Elmo Baseball Association. They presented in front of us the opportunity of a donation of $35,000 to upgrade or make some adjustments to the baseball field at Reed Park. So in that packet, they provided some information in regards to additional fencing, some red ball, increasing the red ball area, the playable area, some bases, as well as new dugout places that would be fenced in as well as part of the fencing. With that, that $35,000 donation, or that upgrade to the Reed baseball field, the request from the donor, they asked that the association be granted the use of the ballpark during the months of May through July for their scheduled evenings of baseball. That was kind of their request with that. With their application is part of your packet as well in there. If we do have any questions in regards to that, just remember with donations, we do need to make exceptions, if there is any exceptions from the commission as far as that donation, that gift, its lasting value is whether that's gonna be a pro or con for the city as a whole, right? So if there is any underlying issues of that, those should be addressed in our recommendations to city council as well. I did list those things as normal with any donation, those things to consider. Does that create a liability? Does it create, a hardship for the city down the road? Does it imply, or does it impede duties that we must perform as city staff down the road? I mean, we're gonna have more maintenance items to do with a gift or something like that. So do take those things into consideration with this proposal. Again, we're asking that the proposed funds be donated in the general maintenance fund, where city staff would manage those funds to make sure that the $35,000 donation for that Reed Park would be placed, all those funds would go towards Reed Park as well. We did do a analysis on the funds that were provided based off those quotes that they presented as well. They are in line with their donation. They might be short because prices have gone up since those funds were initially presented. But largely the amount of the red ball, that price has gone up, as well as the bases and things like that, the attachments, I should say. Those prices have gone up as well. So it would be, the fencing contractor said that he, which is the biggest part of that, is flexible. He's willing to match his price that he quoted over a year ago on that. So take that into consideration as well. With that, I'll take a recommendation or any questions we have with that as well.
Yeah, I've got a question. Is there an estimate on how much removal of the current fence and benches there at Reed Park would cost?
So Public Works staff would remove that.
Okay.
If it's still feasible, we try to keep as much as we can. If it's feasible to reuse at another park, we do have several other parks where the backstop is maybe starting to roll up, or maybe the fence isn't as great anymore. It's an opportunity we could reutilize those at those parks, but
Awesome.
Public Works staff would remove that. As
Okay.
part of that, their bid does not
Include
do
removal.
removal.
Okay, perfect.
Adam, do you have in those questions that are identified any significant concerns about it not meeting? I'm reading them over, I can't see any, but I'm wondering what staff sees?
No, after reading through those, there wasn't anything that stuck out. I mean, just some of those things, like as far as the maintenance side of it, you know, with a brand new field, new upgraded field, not a whole lot of maintenance. I know the Lake Elmo Baseball does a great job of helping out city staff as well as taking care of Lions, the VFW field, and I'm sure they do the same with this one. One of the considerations is the bases itself. With that donation, those items do become part of the city of Lake Elmo. Bases at the other facilities are owned by the association. So that would be a consideration to take into hand of whether or not we would, I guess, hold those under lock and key for rentals and things. Because we do get asked throughout the year for rental for bases. And sometimes we just refer them to the baseball association. So there is a lockbox there that we could reutilize in the future if that's something we want to do. One thing I would recommend is like possibly the pitching base itself with youth baseball. Sometimes that mound gets higher and higher just based on levels and the length of it as well as their draw, right? So the city's recommendation probably wouldn't be to purchase that for us to manage or keep under hand, because it'd be who's responsible for removing it, who's responsible for storing it, things like that. So we would probably ask that the Baseball Association purchase that on their own. That way that they can be responsible for it. So it be utilized under their conditions versus being out there and then we have, you know, a car go out on the field and drive over it. Those are things that happen within the city.
Would the
So
same be true for the rest of the bases themselves, that they just?
possibly, if we didn't want to take that investment on our side, that's something that's easily removable and placed in that dugout, where the large pitching mound might be something different, so.
Okay.
I just have a question. So obviously, it's kind of in the city's interest to allow them to use the park from May to July or whatnot. But if they were to give the $35,000, do they end up signing like a formal contract that says that for 5 years they get to use the park from May to July for their is that what goes on behind the scenes, or does the city kind of just let them do it?
So that field is a rentable, so they'd sign up, it opens up in early January, February, so those parks are rentable, so they just get on a list where they rent it from, they put their name on a list from, you know, like I said, like April to July. There is fees, the deposits they have to put down for those funds. So like Lions Park and VFW, there's a light fees that are incorporated with it as well. So with them, they would be entitled to still sign up and still register for rental of the place. So as far as them providing that donation, we'd have to make that recommendation to say they would have the first opportunity during those months if deemed appropriate.
Just wondering.
Yeah, I would think that, I guess, I'm pausing because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems to me that it would not be maybe even feasible, but appropriate really to have any sort of conditions about priority usage connected to a donation. Or do you not have a position on that?
Well, can I ask a very similar question?
Sure.
Is there precedence of any donation in the city or of preferential use of any city amenities currently that we might take some guidance from?
So I think last year, it came up in discussion last year because we had a number of Frisbee clubs that were renting and soccer clubs that were renting that same green space out there. And I think that's where this question comes into play because they will be competing, I guess you could say, against that open space, right? So where those organizations normally aren't fighting for Lions Park or Reed Park, the outfield, the baseball field, right? So that's where I think this question comes in with them, is that now they will be competing with it because it is open space. It's not going to be fenced in. So
Well, we do have a park reservation policy that does have a continuum of who gets priority, correct?
yes.
So, off the top of my head, I don't remember how it's worded, but I think it has to do with whether it's an association, whether it's the city, whether it's association. And then if there's some sort of two associations, it has who has the most citizens using it? Does that?
Yes, it
sound
does, there is a
correct?
policy written for that, yeah, and so, yeah, and is there other space applicable for it and things like that as well, so.
Because I guess I'm thinking that tying those two together just isn't, a precedent that we would start if one doesn't exist.
No, if they've already got a policy set for rental agreements, that's the policy that we stick with.
Yeah. Here's my big question is, I think they want to make a donation of $35,000. I wish they were here to answer this question themselves. But it seems to me that really what they want is usable fields this coming season. And that isn't really a part of any of this discussion. And so is that feasible? Is that what is part of the discussion? Or are we potentially going to take a $35,000 donation and say, well, we'll see when we can get to that? Because I don't believe that's the intent, and I want to make sure I'm honoring the intent for a donation.
Yeah, so I think, just reading through my synopsis of reading through their presentation from last month is that they want to make Reed Park usable for an age group, right? To make it playable, to make it, not on the competitive side, but make it another field usable because their numbers have gotten to the point where they need that extra field during those times to get everybody in, you know what I mean? So, so I think it is definitely upgrading the city facilities as well as making a useful amenity for them as well. So.
But can we do it this year is, I guess, what the concise question is.
Yes, I think, based off how the spring is going right now, based off the fencing coordinator as well, those two items would be doable. So I think it could be done this spring. With their help and their volunteers and their kids, their students, I know we could probably, would be right in line of completing it. Probably not before baseball starts, but like during season, so.
Yeah, that would be my concern, is that we have a priority and a plan, work plan set up for the public works. And now this thing comes in and does that work into your priorities, which you just answered, I understand.
Yeah.
But that's my question, and if you say it's fine, it will work in, then that's good.
So on the public works side of it, it's, most of it's gonna be about a half a day removing black dirt for them, right? They're gonna bring the red ball in, we'll probably level out most of it with the skid steer, as well as, helping with their use of volunteers and stuff, helping them just get it down to final grade and things like that. So, although, other than that, it's, not so much more public works staff after that, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have another question, Adam. So regarding provision number 7 on thinking about if the city should accept gifts, I saw what was quoted was benches with a portable base, and that seems inconsistent with other benches. And I'm just curious if you have any concerns with the portable base, or if you might be pursuing a different bench option that's more in line with either what's currently there at Reed Park or a fixed base.
Yeah, so if you look at the bench option that they did provide, that is the price of only one bench, so just take that into consideration as well. There's gonna be 2 of those. Those are, like you said, movable, and I think that comes in handy just based off however the fencing is laid out for the dugouts.
Okay.
It might work to our benefit. Now,
Okay.
those can be removed, those movable bottoms to be, stationed later, like you said,
Okay.
like the benches or even our bike stations that were presented earlier will be on a cement concrete pad. We can identify those weaknesses later, say, hey,
Okay.
they're getting moved or getting out of proportion, whatever it might be, and to put them in a firm place at a later date if needed, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I had one other question. So regarding the red ball diamond aggregate, is that something that we are considering adding and like replenishing with that same substrate from here on out? Or would we go back to what's currently at Reed Park?
So that is the actual same material that we use at all of our parks.
Oh, great.
So,
Okay.
yep, so, and actually last year, 15, or I shouldn't say 15, 25 yards were put on that field initially. So I think the infield of that park is probably good,
Okay.
but because we'll be extending that out to that 60 to 90 feet, we'll need that
more.
additional on the outside. So, but as far as material, it's the same ones that we used at Lions, Reed, all of our parks initially, so.
Great, thanks
Yep.
for clarifying.
any further questions for city staff? If not, we could accept a motion and have some discussion on that.
Can I move to recommend to the city council to accept the donation of $35,000 from the Lake Elmo Baseball Association for the improvements of Reed Park baseball field with the intent that it happen for the 2024 baseball season, but with reservation policy found, but with reservations of Reed Park following existing policy?
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Now,
Now discussion, yeah.
now you go for it.
So with that last part about the existing policy, does that assume that they don't get priority anymore with the deal?
No, I think they get priority by the policy.
Okay. I'm just, because, yeah, I definitely think that if they're giving us the money, obviously they should get the priority, but just clarifying.
Yeah, I guess the only discussion point I would have is whether it would be appropriate to add to that inclusion of a plaque of some sort, because that's a significant donation by an outside entity that we partner with, and it seems appropriate to recognize that. I don't know that it needs to be a part of the motion, but that was on my mind.
I have another discussion point. Adam had mentioned the nuances with the bases, so maybe that's something that we want to consider.
Yeah, I think the baseball association, or Lake Elmo Baseball that should be their part, right? The bases, the mound, that if somebody else is renting that park, renting that field, that we should continue, that they would contact the baseball association to use of that equipment. It's in our best interest. It's not our association, it's their association, it's their equipment, you know. So if it does become vandaled or it becomes an issue, it's
Then the
theirs to
city does it.
replace, not city staff or city funds to replace.
So basically just not include the equipment as a part of the work.
Right. I mean, I'm guessing they're gonna use these freestanding benches, they're gonna be like they have in other parks where they're in the fenced-in dugouts where they're gonna be very difficult to remove and be carried around down the street.
Well, I guess I was referring to the bases.
Yeah.
So do you feel inclined to amend your,
I do feel inclined to amend my motion.
well, maybe we should have some,
Well, can we discuss the plaque again? So we see those for other donations, like on benches, right? Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe this is a question for you, Adam. Is there a logical way that we would be able to do something there if there's, not, I mean, there's 2 benches, but a donation is not explicitly 4 benches.
Yeah, we could, I could bring back some examples or just some things to, that we can consider for, that donation. Yeah.
Okay,
If it'd be, if it's a bigger plaque or something else, just so it's noticeable, right?
or a sign that goes on the
Yeah.
backstop. I think I've seen that before.
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
I would still suggest we go back to the organization, because, again, there might be a reason they don't want it, okay? And when we've done it in the past, the person who's made the donation said, oh, by the way, can you put a sign on there for me? So this is a little bit backwards to that.
Okay.
So it might be good to ask them.
Further discussion? And did you want to make a amendment to your motion?
yeah, I would like to make an amendment.
Need a-
So, can I, I would like to amend my motion to move to recommend to the city council to accept the donation of $35,000 from the Lake Elmo Baseball Association for the improvements of Reed Park Baseball Field, excluding bases, with the intent that improvements be made for the 2024 season, but with reservations of Reed Park following existing city policy.
Do we have a second to that amendment?
Second that.
Okay. Further discussion on that? All those in favor of amending that initial motion? Aye?
All right?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, so now we're back to our main motion. Further discussion on that at all?
I again think this is good because, again, we have talked about donations, and I think this is a good way to get organizations like this really bought into and engaged with the parks and the community system by putting stuff forward. And if we remember the whole history, I think the first couple times they came to us, there was no offer of a donation. So this is a move by them to become more engaged in the park system. So I think it's good.
Further discussion, or should I call the question? Are you going to allow me to?
I will allow you.
This is a reoccurring theme here. So the motion is to move to recommend to city council to accept the donation of $35,000 from the Lake Elmo Baseball Association for improvements of Reed Park Baseball Field, excluding bases, with the intent that improvements be made for the 2024 season, but with reservations of Reed Park following existing city policy. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Easy for me to say. Thank you. Adam, so number 8 on our agenda is Limerick Village Concept Plan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant for tonight's concept plan is SPQR Lake Elmo LLC, which is a branch of Maplewood Development. The property is currently zoned rural transitional and guided in the comp plan for medium-density residential and high-density residential. The property is just under 80 acres, and the applicant is proposing roughly 748 units. This would be comprised of apartments, townhomes, and single-family detached dwellings. This is slightly adjusted from what was in the staff report at 765. This is still subject to change due to the apartment buildings and townhomes that could flex in their unit count. But it'll be generally in that mid-700 number. So park dedication can be satisfied between 3 ways. The first would be fee in lieu of land, using the county records and appraised land value. That would be roughly $512,000. The city could accept 10% land area. In this case, would be 7.94 acres, or a combination of both. And then I will note that the city does offer trail credit for up to 25% park dedication credit. So here is the proposed site layout. Let me see if my mouse shows up here. No. So this project would include realignment of Hudson Boulevard, which is just peaking on the bottom corner of the project. It would also include the construction of Fifth Street. They are proposing a park with Outlot A at 2.42 acres with off-street parking. And then up in the top right, there is a private clubhouse. Moving on to review of the comprehensive plan. So in reviewing the park search area map, staff has created 3 findings. The first is that the property is fully within a neighborhood park search area. The second is that this quadrant of the city is currently lacking park amenities within walking distance. And the third is that the developer is currently proposing an outlot of 2.42 acres with off-street parking. And then to put that into perspective, I have a few parks listed here. This would be kind of in line with Carriage Station or Hammes Park, size-wise. Reviewing the trail search map, staff has 3 findings. That would be that this property is within a city trail search corridor along Fifth Street. The plan identifies the properties within a road-separated trail search corridor along Manning Avenue. And again, this quadrant of the city is lacking trail amenities within walking distance. And with that, I have a staff recommendation. This is a 3-prong request. So staff is suggesting the acceptance of that 2.42 acres, 25% trail credit for the applicable trails, and then a fee for the remaining balance. With that, I can stand for any questions, and we do have the developer here tonight.
Thank you. You have questions for the city planner? Clarifications?
Yeah, Sophia, I just have a quick question. So based on the city guidance for high-density and medium-density residential, the park, the land percent being 10%, can you just give a little history maybe about that if you know it, like where that 10% comes from? Because I know it's different based on different zoning, and it seems, 2.42 acres is not close to 10%, and I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
I would probably have to defer to the applicant on why they proposed the size that they did. I can speak to the 10% versus 5%. It's likely 10% is required in those urban districts because you have a larger population there.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so it was 750-ish units. Do you, by chance, just like back of the envelope calculations, know what like the average household size in like Elmo is?
I think it's 2.5.
Okay, so we're talking, like, this could be a significant part of the city's population. Okay.
And a short distance from the middle school,
Yeah,
very short distance. So a park of that size seems to be fairly small.
I would tend to agree.
Okay.
We can have that discussion in due time. Can you, would you be able to clarify the Fifth Street park, I think it's Parkway to the west, is that correct when or is it, I guess it doesn't matter. The Fifth Street does have a walking path along it, and actually I think it portions has a sidewalk on the south side. I don't see that in the schematics here, the drawing here. Do you know, one, is that going to be required to extend that Fifth Street? And would that be part of that trail credit? Would that be considered trail for our purposes?
I believe Fifth Street has a trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other side. They would be required to maintain that Fifth Street design standard
Okay,
through their development. And they could receive park credit for that trail.
Okay.
Internal to the development, are there any sidewalks or trails?
I would have to defer to the applicant.
Thank you.
And I guess just to continue my question, on Manning, does that same, there already is trail to the north, is that right?
From the middle school, there is for sure, but it's a county road.
Yeah, with this request, they'd be adding a trail along their segment of Manning.
So the developer's not here, so I'm not gonna get any.
They are here.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
just waiting.
No, yeah.
Didn't know when I got them to you.
So I guess my main question is, it's your recommendation. Would you be able to articulate the city's position as to why the 2.4 would be allowable, since it is such a difference from the 10%, from 8 acres? Since it is in the city park search area. Is there a way of articulating how that would be acceptable?
It's what the developer is proposing, so the city is presenting it to you tonight. If you want to make a recommendation that you want more land, that's something that they'd have to take into consideration and possibly revise their concept.
Okay. I just mean that was the recommendation from city staff. I didn't know if there was a specific reason why that recommendation was made, but if there isn't, that's fine. Other questions? We do have the developer here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Parks Commission. My name is Mario Cucciarella. I'm the owner of Maplewood Development Company. Just to answer the central question about the size of the park, the property is comprehensively guided for both medium-density and high-density residential. Under this scenario, we had a very difficult time making sure that we could meet both of the criteria for the density that's required by the Metropolitan Council for you in this area. As a result of that, the problem that we're faced with is to try to create parks and open space that are commensurate with your park requirement, but also that are commensurate with the density requirements for this area. In the high-density residential area, I don't see the breakdown here and I didn't memorize it, but I think we're at right around 14 or 15 units an acre, which is the requirement. The more problematic part is in the medium-density area where the requirement is a minimum of 4 units an acre. If we take more area out and place park in there, and Sophia can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no way to meet the density requirements under that scenario. So we're happy to entertain different ideas for this, but I can tell you that this is one of many iterations that we've been through to try to meet the density requirements. You'll note that we've tried to inject one of the concepts that we've done at a couple of our projects in other areas of the metropolitan area, most notably the Amber Fields project in Rosemont at the Umore Park. And those are smaller lots, single family, rather than, loading up the entire site with townhomes. We were trying to create something that would be aesthetically pleasing and really fit in with more of the theme of a city like Lake Elmo. I do think that the open space, generally speaking, with the open ponding area, and that is a large area, along with the park, I think in combination with the private amenities that'll be available to the rental townhomes and the apartments would be sufficient to serve the residents that are here. But, I think we did a pretty good job of trying to meet the requirements along with the primary need to meet the density requirements. That's really what it came down to.
Yep.
Yeah, can you just talk a little bit about, how you got, so I know per Sophia's communication that the number of units has changed slightly, but I'm just wondering how you arrived at the number of single-family, the number of townhomes, and the number of apartment units, as well as how many floors in the apartments? If you can talk a little bit about that density breakdown a bit more, that would help.
Well, we've done many apartment projects across the metropolitan area in concert with much larger sites than this. The Umore site is almost 3,000 homes when it's done. The Willowbrook site in Oakdale is gonna be about 1,400 homes when it's done. Rush Hollow and Maple Grove, probably about 600 units. Woodbury, we've certainly done the same combination. The apartment site does have some flexibility because you never really know what the absorption is until it comes time to really place that in the marketplace. These are planned to be market rate apartments. The number there gets adjusted, as Sophia alluded to, between, maybe, I think one of our iterations was closer to 300 units, but I think this last iteration is maybe more in the mid-200s. Typically, most of the builders that we team with, don't want to go over 3 stories simply because there's a different criteria for building at that point. You need steel erection rather than wood frame. So that's one of the driving criteria, but more of it is just the amount of absorption that you can have on a site like that specific to one site. With the townhomes, the rental townhomes, those units are very much like the Continental plan that you folks have up the street there in Hudson. We've done other sites with them. They did one at Willowbrook. You've seen that. So that count pretty much comes with the territory. The 240 to 280 unit range for that size of site is very typical across the metropolitan area. Now, the rest of the site, in terms of the combination of single family, and really what they are is detached townhomes, this will be an association across the entire site. So these are single family that will all be part of an association. And as I said, rather than try to meet the medium density requirement with simply doing all townhomes around the site, we're bringing in a product that we are seeing both here in Minnesota, but also in other areas of the country that we work in, Denver and Fort Worth, where we're seeing smaller lot, single family that are part of an association. So all of their lawn maintenance and snow care and so forth, and some of it could be even extended to insurance and so forth, will be part of, the fee that they pay. But they truly are detached townhomes in the true sense. So, I don't know if that helps to answer your question. Coming to account on this, we go through, I think this one is our seventh or eighth swing at trying to see how we can meet the requirements under a comp plan that requires a split here between medium density and high density residential. Very, very unique.
So by you talking about the limitations to the density relative to the park side, that leaves out the obvious, that obviously you're saying then the 8.78 of the stormwater is set and cannot be changed?
The area that we're addressing here with stormwater management is a complete flood zone that goes across the area to the south of us, the industrial site that Mr. Emerson has. We're basically picking up all the water and turning what used to be a flood area into a managed development site. So there was a big, big area of flood. I don't recall the entire acreage of that, but it encompassed some of our site, a lot of the site to the north, but also nearly half of the industrial site to the south.
So the answer is no, you can't change it. That, I wasn't asking how big it
Oh,
was,
I'm
and why it
sorry.
was big.
I didn't mean to-
Is how changeable is it?
I don't think there's a lot of change. I'm sorry, my consulting engineer isn't here tonight, but this thing was sized, I can tell you, for both infiltration and for the regular stormwater storage.
And then along the same line, this is a drawing, I don't really see a scale on it, but I'm trying to figure out if I can get a playground set in that narrow sliver of what's shown there. I have
Oh.
no indication of the width.
Well, this is a concept plan. We do have detail on it. We
So
could,
you believe that there'll be enough land there to put a playground in? There's enough
oh, very
width
much
there.
so, yeah, oh, yes.
Several pieces of equipment.
Sure, you bet.
Okay.
Would you be able to speak to the, I think, 28 parking spot spaces? Is that for the park, or is that for apartment parking, overflow parking, or what is that?
No, the parking that you see in the park area is specific to the park,
Oh.
for visitors to the park.
Is it
That
Visit
has
park
nothing to
visitors?
do with the parking. That's already been dedicated to the apartments or to the rental townhomes or any other parking.
So it's not part of the 2.42?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't want to say that. I think that the parking for the park was specific to the park.
Okay.
That's fine. Back to my old question. Oh. Are there any sidewalks or trails interior to the development?
Really all throughout the park. Oh, I'm sorry, throughout the development.
Throughout the development, so there are sidewalks, the lines there do show sidewalks. Thank
Correct.
you.
Ellen?
Yeah, I guess this was very similar to Hank's question, but one thing that we, as a Parks Commission, have discussed before is these neighborhood parks, when there's space, to improve amenities, we can bring in some traffic with that. And so thinking about ease of access of parks, and where there might be additional overflow parking, for instance. I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit about the Limerick Parkway that's drawn here, if there would be sufficient space for parking on maybe one side of the street, as well as if you have any idea what the speed limit might be. And it sounds like there will be at least sidewalks. Do you see any concerns with additional traffic through there for a public amenity?
Well,
Yeah.
Limerick Parkway, in one of our I think I should say more than one iteration, we showed parking on both sides of the streets, and there would be off-site parking, off-street parking, I should say, going vertically on Limerick. I don't think that the city staff agreed with that. So you'd have to ask them why about that. Our contention would be that Limerick Parkway, although what you would initially look and see is, you know, a thoroughfare kind of street really isn't a thoroughfare kind of street because it doesn't go anywhere. And it's probably not gonna go further north, as you see it there, simply because you've got the power lines that are on the north side of that area, and the road really dies back into the industrial site there. So, you know, from our perspective, having parking on both sides of the street would be entirely appropriate, but that's, you know, that's in contrast to what the staff thought.
The city standards for parking on both sides of the street is, we have to have 32 feet curb to curb to have parking on both sides. If we do limit it down, we just approved the development with what, 28 feet? Was it?
I think that we could accommodate that if that,
32 curb
yeah,
to
I
curb,
think,
yeah.
that'd be pretty easy to do.
So 32 feet is the maximum or the minimum requirement?
That's a minimum for two-side parking.
Can you speak to what would happen with that outlot A if the city declined to accept that as the donated land? The park.
Park A, do you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think there's a couple possibilities. I think we'd be so inclined to probably provide some sort of a private area. I don't, if you're asking me, is it more housing? No, I don't think so. I think we would probably make that specific to one of the users here. There might be a chance to maybe reconfigure it a little bit, you know, the site plan, to place it maybe in a different area if that would be more amenable. But I think, you know, look, I develop a lot of property. I mean, we have 5,000 lots in entitlement. I do this every day. A park belongs here. I'm not gonna dissuade anybody from that. I think that's a good use, and I think with the open space of the ponding area to it, it's gonna feel real open, and it's a good application.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have another question about Outlet A, which is the stormwater system, and maybe city staff has some information on this. But when I realize that this is not a super detailed plan right now, but I'm just curious if the size of that outlet is dependent on, as you described, the floodplain, that type of thing, or if it's also dependent on the amount and location and siting of impervious surface that we're seeing here, like parking lots and roads in addition to building footprints.
No, it's predicated on the area that this needs to serve to capture the water that's coming down through this area, and ultimately, some of which is traveling to the Hudson River, but some of it that has to stay on this site. Impervious surface on a project like this is not significant enough to change the overall ponding requirement. We probably have more storage in here than what we need, but they're built that way. If you have a different opinion, I certainly would come to it, but if we've got additional storage, it's probably another 10 or 12,000 cubic feet of storage. That's how they're built for big storm occurrences, and we always err on the side of caution, you know, when it comes to stormwater management.
I guess the question I have, again, we're obviously focusing a little bit on Outlot A. So I'm looking at the drawing that is on the picture here, and it has the blue outline of outlying of Outlot 8. But on the concept drawing was set in our packet, it's got a separate infiltration pond.
Correct.
So is the 8, and that seems to be outlined at 8.78 acres is just the blue Outlot A, and that infiltration, can that be shrunk down? That's in our drawing. It's two completely different colors on on what we got in our packet.
Again, my engineer isn't here, but I can tell you that this was sized to meet the requirements of this area. And the calculation, we're not guessing about that on the concept plan. That is sized correctly.
And it's,
That, of course, is subject to review by your city
well,
engineer.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know when we were studying on this, the Outlot A stormwater, the benches this is not gonna be a flat area. There's gonna be coming down at an angle to provide stuff. So even though, it's not gonna be steep enough that you have to fence it off, but it's not gonna be a soccer field. that will fill up with water during water periods, is my understanding.
Okay. Further questions for the developer? Thank you, appreciate it. Do, anybody have a motion? We're gonna have some discussion based on that motion.
I guess, we're the Parks Commission. My motion is to reject the offer of the 2.42 acres of land for neighborhood park with park dedication credit for trails, if acceptable in fee, and have the developer get this closer to the 10% of 7.94 acres for park dedication.
Okay. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second that motion.
Okay. I tend to agree with that. I think the parks that we have as, that the city staff put as examples do fit the definition right on the edge of a pocket park and a neighborhood park. Hames and Pilot, or Firefly, I guess, would be another one I think of, really have catered to a very localized neighborhood, and I don't think it has served the city at large well. VFW Park is a downtown community, park. I can certainly, well, I can't, I guess I don't really know about development, but I do appreciate, I don't have any question that you're trying to fit in the spaces that you're trying to fit in. As Mike said, I think our job is to try and figure out what is best for city, for open space, parks, and for city residents, not just the neighbors there that are going to utilize it. That parking lot, I think, Ellen, I think you kind of hinted at that, I think it was you, about the traffic coming in a parking lot with that sort of, I can envision the apartment buildings on one side. There is vast open space with that drainage, but it's just not, it's not a space that I think that the city, from what we've worked on in the last couple of years, we're really gravitating towards not trying to maintain these small spaces that we have plenty of, and we've got to maybe rein it in and figure out how to do it a little bit better. So from my perspective, I guess I'm more in favor at this point to accept the fee in total and not land at all, but that's not the motion, so. Other,
Well, I think this is part of the problem that, Chairman, you brought up long ago, is that some of these things, when you don't have any real details about what it's going to be, then I would say that there's probably some room in there to provide some of those details that would potentially make this a viable park. It is noted, as is noted in the staff report, and this commission has said several times that there is a need for a park in this quadrant of the city. So that is, leads me to want to make it workable, okay? And I believe, looking at the drawings and those types of things, that there is some potential. I know that the numbers are calculated down to the fine detail, but it does appear to me that there might be some opportunity to provide something more feasible as a park.
I also second you those words, Hank. yeah, I think that I can appreciate that none of us are developers here, sitting on this park commission. But I can also appreciate where these guidelines come from, and how I interpret the intent of the city of Lake Elmo to preserve open space character, is through parks and through open space, not necessarily what development looks like. And therefore, you know, I would like to see a park of a size that is in line with city guidance, to be closer to that 10%. And I also, you know, it just strikes me that this could be a significant population center within the city. And there's no parks there, and we've heard countless times about, you know, the need for more amenities, like where are we gonna put more pickleball courts? Where can we have a soccer field? Where can we have some baseball fields? And I think that it would be a real missed opportunity if we didn't kind of highlight the fact that this is in a great location for a park, as city staff has identified, and that, you know, it could be great to try to meet that 10%.
Oh, and Sophia. Oh, I am so sorry. So I think it seems to me to be appropriate to talk about the Oakland Middle School Park. And I don't know if city staff is able to speak to that as far as that being identified as an agreement we had that we, for lack of a better term, sort of forgot about. But that's less than a half mile up the road. I don't know, can you talk about that at all?
I don't know that I could talk to it in detail. I do know that the city doesn't own that property. It's
Okay.
owned by the school district, so this is specifically for city-owned
Right.
property.
But we do have a joint powers
Correct.
agreement. If this is something John Ames had brought up, and it is there. It seems to me, you know, we don't have a lot of details on it. Again, we haven't done a lot of work on it, but it seems to me, I think it's 3.7 acres, yes, that it is not city land, but there is city access to a park for that. So I guess from my perspective, again, as far as if we have that park, having a 2.4 acre park inside a fairly high dense neighborhood, doesn't seem to be cost effective, really, if we're going to be working on both of those.
I'm not sure I understand, if we have 2.42 acres for this neighborhood that we're putting in, why can't, I mean, is it not good enough to have a playground and a basketball court for this neighborhood? I mean, do we really need a soccer field there? Is it, I mean, my vote would be to take the 2.42, put up those two simple amenities, and then take the rest of the money. I don't really understand why we would need too much more than that. Plus, I'm not sure that, by the way that the drawing looks, that we would even be able to expand it too much anyways. I don't know.
If I could just make a comment on the current motion, the developer is proposing adding trails with this development, and the recommended or suggested motion doesn't include anything regarding accepting or denying trail credit, so that's something you might want to include in your motion as well, or recommendation.
I think the reason for it is the location of this is, you're right, you know, we've all discussed where the location of this is in the city. There is lack of parks in this. It's also connectivity to 94 and Manning. It's a major throughway through to, that area is gonna need this large population's gonna need a soccer field, a baseball field. We're already short all these sorts of fields as it is now, as we've already discussed from a baseball concept here that are donating funds for a baseball field. Now we're gonna add a pretty highly populated area that's gonna need those amenities, not just a play structure or a basketball court. We're starving for pickleball courts. We're looking for them anywhere we can find them. This is gonna be, you know, these townhouses could be that generation that's looking for pickleball courts. That's gonna need to be in their neighborhood. I just think that's something we need to look at, that it encapsulates everybody that's gonna live in the single-family homes, if it's the 2.5 per household, if it's, I just think we need more. We just need more park area besides the play structure. It needs to not just be for the kids, for the pickleball people, the soccer people. There's 2.5 is more than two adults. There's kids in there that are gonna run around. They need not necessarily a soccer field, but just an open space to run around in.
Can you, please, the trails, I guess we didn't discuss too much other than the trail along Fifth, the kind of the Manning, the Fifth. Is there a proposal for internal trails? Did I miss that?
They're proposing the trail along Fifth Street, Manning, I believe a trail on Limerick, and then the
Okay.
portion of Hudson.
Okay, but I don't know about Limerick, that's a new road, but all those others would be required, correct? I mean, that's not something that, it might go towards a credit, but as you said, they've got to extend that regardless.
Correct.
So I guess I didn't consider that an omission just because it seems like if it needs to be added, if it is an omission, I think we should correct it, but it seems like that's something that's required.
And
they
wouldn't
would get
Manning be,
credit.
wouldn't Manning be considered the county road for on that side? For a path, wouldn't that be on the county side for them to do, not necessarily the developer? The county would have to put that in?
Maybe I have to defer to Mario.
Manning, of course, is a county road, but we would be building that as part of the requirement for the project. If you don't mind, I would like to make one comment if I can, unless you've closed the hearing part of it. You know, the area, we don't have that graphic up here, but the area that was designated for park area here is really a general area that goes beyond the land that I have. One of the original iterations we had was to try to put the park on the north side of the site and then eventually marry it with other park area on the north property, the property to the north of us, I should say. And so I think there's two factors here that have really limited us. The first one is that, you know, there's a total of 76 acres in the city of Lake Elmo that has to meet the high density requirement under the Metropolitan Council's, rule. 41 of it sits here. That's the reality of it. And you can say that you want a park, and as I say, I agree with you on that. I think we need park area here, but the dilemma is to say that you want 10% just on this site renders that 41 acre contribution for your Metropolitan Council out the window. So my argument back would be, certainly there's room in and around this site for more park area, but it's not all contained on this site simply because we have to meet that requirement that's been imposed by the Met Council in terms of density. So I think that'll be a question for the council is what I'm trying to get at. And I do think though it's a little bit, I'm too old to talk about unfair. Fair doesn't mean anything in my business, but the point is that there could be a combination of sites here to serve the park part of it. And certainly in all communities that we deal in, some of those are not contiguous. There's parks on each one of them that are connected by the trail system that can work in concert. So just to make those comments.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that last comment, that the idea that this has to be in one spot, and this is why I've advocated for us being forward-thinking about, we have this big circle, there should be a park here, but somehow, we've got to be able to say, okay, here's how this is going to look on a real scale, knowing that the densities are what they are, knowing what Met Council is, what it is, that you could do something like have a park on, that is divided between parcels with connecting trails or something like that. This process doesn't really allow for that opportunity. I mean, we kind of.
But the motion supports that.
The motion does support that to a degree, yes, yes. Yeah. All right, is there further discussion or? You're gonna have to help me with restating the motion, if you would, because I don't remember what I did not write down the last phrasing on. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, I can get to it. So the motion is to move to reject the acceptance of 2.42 acres of land for a neighborhood park with park dedication trail, credit for trails if applicable, and a fee in lieu of dedication for the remainder based on the findings listed in the staff report, and get closer to the 10% per city requirement.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against?
Aye.
Nay. Abstentions? That passed 3-2. Thank you, appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is Legends of Lake Elmo Concept Plan.
All right, another development for you tonight. The applicant and owner is Nathan Landucci with Landucci Homes Incorporated. The property is currently zoned rural residential and guided in the comp plan for rural single family. The property is just over 110 acres. The applicant is proposing 50 single-family units with this request, and the development type would be an OP PUD, which is an open space planned unit development. The map is shown on the right side. This property would be south of the Sanctuary neighborhood and north of 50th Street. So again, to satisfy park dedication requirements, the city has three options. The first would be fee in lieu of land. In this case, it'd be roughly $77,000. 5% of the land area, since this is a rural property, which would be 5.5 acres. Combination of both, and then again, the city can offer trail credit not to exceed 25%. And then I have the site layout for you here. The blue lines indicate proposed trails. I'll point out some key areas. My mouse still doesn't show up. So there is a road connection and trail connection to the Sanctuary neighborhood in the north. There's a trail connection to the Hidden Knoll Park off to the northwest corner. The applicant is proposing to connect to the Tamarack Farms development, and then there would also be a connection and trail down along 50th Street. So in reviewing the comprehensive plan, staff has two findings. The first would be that this property is not within a park search area, and the second finding would be that it is within walking distance of three neighborhood parks: Carriage Station, Hidden Knoll, and Tana Ridge. In reviewing the trail search map, staff has four findings. The first would be that the property is within a regional trail search corridor and city trail search corridor. The city has sent this proposal to Washington County since it would be included in that regional greenway search corridor. And the county indicated that the greenway trail is actually going along Stillwater Boulevard, so it would not be impacting the site. The city also sent the project to the Public Works Department for review, and the Public Works team indicated that they wanted a connection to Hidden Knoll Park and Tamarack Farms, which is proposed with this project. And then we also reviewed the trail along 50th Street and determined that a trail along the south side of 50th Street would be preferred due to the wetland on the north. So there would be a proposed crossing on 50th and then a trail along the south side. This would reduce impacts to the wetland and then future costs for maintenance. And with that, I have a recommendation for you with the fee in lieu of land and then trail credit for the applicable trails. I can stand for any questions, and we do have the developer here.
Thank you. We have questions for city planner? I guess it's sort of assumed, I don't want to assume though that the proposed trails are public trails? And not like HOA trail or anything?
Correct. If they receive trail credit, they would be public trails.
Okay.
And they'd be blacktop, right?
Correct. They'd have to meet the trail criteria.
Trail. Okay.
Further questions or clarifications? Does the developer want to speak?
Nathan Landucci with Landucci Homes. Thanks for having me here tonight. I don't have anything to add to that. We took a look at this. I've owned this land for about 11 years now, and we've brought this to the city before and never moved forward on it, but it seemed, you know, in previous discussions that it didn't make sense to put a park here just because it'd be a small pocket park, so the staff recommendation seems like that makes sense to me in terms of what we can really do, what we really should do with this site. So 50 homes across, 110 acres is pretty low density, obviously, so, and everybody's yard is like a park. It's a larger lot, so, yeah, I'm here for any questions.
Questions? You had mentioned that you'd gone before the city before. Was there any specific reason that it didn't go through that was related to parks?
Nothing related to parks, no.
Okay. Well, commissioners, any further questions? No? Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it. Well, I can make a motion to recommend the acceptance of fee in lieu of land for the Legends of Lake Elmo project with public connections to Hidden Knoll Park, 50th Street, and Tamarack Farms with up to 25% park dedication credit for trails, if applicable, based on the findings listed in the staff report. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion on this? I'll just say I added the word public because public connections, because get it in the record whenever I can, is, because I know from time to time that just comes up with the developments and HOA agreements and who has access to what, but if it's accessing a public, and I know that that's the standard, but I added that in there.
This is, the trails is very important to this, and that's what some people wouldn't see is when this is completed, the east side trail from basically 36 or even the old village, you can come walking through the various Ingstrom subdivisions, you can come through here and then connect it almost all the way to 36. So in supporting our goal for trail continuity, this is a good piece. This is a good piece to fit in there. And as staff also pointed out, there are 3 parks already here in this area. And the main thing that is needed is to provide that connectivity, not more parkland in this quadrant. So to me, it's more straightforward and it provides a vital piece.
Further discussion? Well, I can call the question. The motion is to recommend the acceptance in fee of lieu of land for the Legends of Lake Elmo project with connections to Hidden Knoll Park, 50th Street, and Tamarack Farms. Sorry, nope, I'm reading the wrong one. Let's strike that. The motion is to recommend the acceptance of fee in lieu of land for the Legends of Lake Elmo project with public connections to Hidden Knoll Park, 50th Street, and Tamarack Farms with up to 25% park dedication credit for trails if applicable based on the findings listed in the staff report. All those in favor? Say aye. Any no? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 10, which is invasive species. You hanging in there?
I forgot to bring a water bottle.
I did too.
Did you want to take public comment first?
Yes. If that's appropriate from your perspective, sure.
Thank you. Then I'm Tony Manzera. I live at 5050 Kirkwood Avenue in Lake Elmo, and I'm the founder of the Friends of Lake Elmo Sunfish Lake Park, which has adopted the park and built the nature center in the Sunfish Lake Park. I'd like to just take a moment to thank the city staff, the Parks Commission, everyone who's helped with the process of removing buckthorn and getting the ability to get grants from the DNR. We've achieved $650,000 now in grants from the DNR to remove buckthorn and restore the habitat of Sunfish Lake Park. So I really want to applaud the action of Commissioner Ash and Commissioner Barrett to take on the idea of having a city policy about invasive species. I think that having such a policy would be of value to people who want to continue this kind of effort, because there are grants that you can get if the city will back up the idea of doing so. So I'm all in favor of having an invasive species policy. I'd like to comment just one moment on the two points that are made in the write-up here. Does the project address invasive species that are particularly likely to spread or cause outsized negative effects if unmanaged? And this is the wording that you would need to say, okay, the city is behind going after the worst things first. And if you look for a grant, you can say, okay, the city's behind us on this one. And will the proposed project help the city maintain or accelerate past investments to manage invasive species? And if we look for grants in the future, for example, to do controlled burns or spot herbicide and stuff like that after the completion of the projects as they're currently envisioned, it would help if the city had this kind of a policy. So also, the next one also, will the city investment in the proposed project allow for outside resources to be contributed to the project? And there's some thought that it would make sense to create a vision for Lake Elmo, that we would be in the forefront of cities in Minnesota that are taking action against invasive species. And so if the city did have a strong policy, this would support the efforts of people who might want to take on that kind of a thing in the future. So I'm all in favor of what you're talking about here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we'll start out, I'll just give a brief background where we've been, and then the purpose of this discussion today is to just get some, where the commissioner would like to see regarding drafting some language in that draft report. So I'll do a little bit of background here, and then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Ash to kind of help us file through some of those things, answer some questions, and kind of bring up that discussion of that invasive species. And she can provide an update of where we're at in that regards as well. So again, at last month's Parks Commission meeting, Commissioner Ash requested to just give an update on where we're at with our invasive species project. So back in August of 2023, the Parks Commission meeting, we brought up the invasive species topic just to discuss, to bring up that conversation of where we're at as a city as a whole, but also the interests and our feasibility of developing a plan and a potential policy to manage invasive species throughout the city. Staff presented some of the several most common types of invasive species that we see within our parks and just our general use area. But also, again, just to reiterate, those are just some common ones that are known by probably normal citizens, right? There's a number of them that are out there that are just starting to appear that might not have the education that some of those more common ones do. So again, currently the city does not have a policy for managing invasive species. So part of this is just, again, to develop that language to present in front of you at a future time to say, these are the things that we'd like to do as a Parks Commission, but as a city as a whole, to help manage to be in the forefront of invasive species within our city. With that, I'll turn that over to Commissioner Ellen and for the discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, just here to have a discussion. As Adam said, yeah, we've made some progress on thinking about these things and getting some outside perspectives as well. But just curious if other commissioners have ideas of other language that they might like to see reflected in a draft policy for prioritization of where funds would be dedicated for managing invasive species, because we know we can't do everything. And we also know that staff time is limited, funds are limited, and allocating them in a responsible manner is going to be in everyone's best interest. So feel free to just share your ideas.
Well, first I'll say thanks for the work you've done on it so far, along with staff. I'll just echo Tony to say, this is important work that we could decide to lead on if we wanted to. And I think from my perspective, as far as language, I think a constructive, useful, well, not lofty, not something that gets carried away, but still has some vision to it and has the ability to inspire people to take action. I think from a policy perspective, I think is something that we could strive for. I would make the distinction, I think we've kind of, reading through this, we talk about this is a kind of a project, talk about a plan, we talk about a policy. I think, I would like to see going forward sort of a short policy which may operate as a vision statement of sorts. A policy that says, here's what Lake Elmo, the city of Lake Elmo is doing in regard to invasive species. And then there's a separate plan for enacting that policy. That's kind of how and I don't know if anybody else thinks of it that way, but that's how I kind of think of this as being able to wrap my head around what we're doing. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, and I guess one other update is, so you're all aware that there's a planning process going on for a vision for Lake Elmo Parks, right? That's the master planning process. And there is the potential to tie in some of this to that, potentially with recommendations that the city adopt a policy or a plan to manage invasive species, which could dovetail with this effort really nicely, so that there is that synergy and that our pieces are talking to each other, basically. So that's great. Peter, can I ask you, do you want to expand at all on your constructive but not super lofty vision, what that might be?
That was kind of sort of, that was the best words I could come up with. But what I mean to say is, I think that we can be leaders, we can have a vision, but also recognize that we've got to work within the parameters of reality. So, from that perspective, no, I think the policy itself is, that Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council, and I think others, I don't think that those elements, the 4 key elements that they cite, are theirs alone. I think those are, I've seen them before as far as that early detection, the prevention, prioritizing management efforts, and collaborating with partners is a very concise, yet forward-thinking and leading on managing invasive species. So that in itself could be two sentence policy of what the city's position is, and then a plan further from there.
I don't have any magic words, but what it needs to do is to clearly state what we want to do and why we want to do it for our parks. So the things that we do, it will be clear to people why we're doing it. and the things that we don't do, it is also clear why we're not doing those things. Okay, whether it's resources or feasibility or whatever. I think that's what this verbiage does, is it clearly says, hey, you know, if we approve another one for Sunfish Lake, well, we're doing it to support this policy. But if we're not doing all the parks at the same time, we can also point that there's words in there that says within the physical limit or resource limitations of the city. So I think that's kind of a clear thing that needs to be done, is that distinguishing why and why not we're doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really, that, the fourth element in that, that advisory councils is partnering.
Yep.
And I think that's absolutely essential, and I think that from my perspective, that is a highlight. And whether that's, you know, with Mr. Manzara not leading the charge by himself over at Sunfish, we partner with him on this stuff, whether it's the Adopt a Park plan for the rest of the city, which we have an Adopt a Park plan. If we want to strengthen that to say, hey, here's how we can, you know, you can, if you adopt the park, you can work on invasive species management with us. That includes grants, because again, the funding is the question, but that's a collaboration, that's a partnership, is that grant process. So to me, that's an essential highlight of any policy we have. There's no sense, probably in any topic, but with invasive species, to try and go at it alone, since there are resources out there, and it's certainly, stuff spreads, you gotta work with people.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the big ones, of course, is with the county, who has their park, you know, right in the middle of our city. And
That's true,
I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah,
Tony's
yeah.
already done some things about this, is trying to coordinate with the county. But we don't want to make all of our parks surrounding this park, you know, free of infestation, and yet the county not do anything. So I think it's something where we should partner.
County's doing
The
good.
county,
They're doing good.
Included the collaboration with those partners.
yeah, no, that's a great, the county is a great, another partner, and they do a lot of work on invasive species in that park. Yeah, that's a great example. So to me, again, that's a highlight. Sorry, not to jump on your.
No, no, I,
Kind of going along with this, so, yeah, I mean, I feel like the major strength that the city, you know, we're lucky to have, right, is that this collaboration with partners is already super strong. But I guess in my mind, that kind of, maybe where the city is weak is this vision, right? And we've relied on the actions towards managing invasive species really heavily on collaborating with partners rather than the city driving these efforts. And so I'm just curious what the other commissioners think about that, and think about the city's role in collaborating with partners. What might you like to see there in terms of action or how things are done? Or if you don't have any thoughts, that's fine too.
If I could say, like, I think our biggest partner within the city is just our residents alone, correct? Like, education, right? I think that might be a part that we could utilize our biggest body of our 13,000 residents approximately to collaborate as a partner as a whole, right? So that's my personal thought.
Thanks, Adam.
Sure.
I think Adam makes a good point in that, you know, much of the city is owned by the residents, and the amount of parkland is significant, but not overwhelming with respect to the rest of the land. So there is a law on the books that certain things have to be removed from private land, but it's not really enforced. It would be nice if there were an incentive program instead, so that residents would be not only educated, but also somehow assisted in clearing up their own land. For a very simple possibility would be to have a particular time when removed invasive species would be picked up by the city as or a place where things could be dropped off free. So you'd create an awareness and also some assistance in helping the residents clear their own land, which would probably have more impact than actually whatever you could do in the parks.
He makes a valid point there too.
Yeah.
You know, but like you said, if we can get in the adopt a park side and have a city cleanup with that, that helps everybody work together.
Yeah. I think one tiny nuance in this, which is totally workable with all of this, but I think that what we as a Parks Commission get to recommend for motions and things like that and where dollars are spent is going to be on parkland. We're not going to be able to assist any resident in invasive species management, but that is not, that's different from having a policy that cross-cuts across Lake Elmo. So that's great. But I guess that also kind of feeds into the fiscal impact section here, which is also for discussion. Just starting that conversation, we don't have to, none of you have to say anything about it if nothing's on the top of your mind. But just starting to think about already that discussion that we'll have later in the year regarding the capital improvement plan, which is a 10-year plan, so really long range. Things that are in that capital improvement plan, we can talk about and think about, even if the timeline is, quite far out on that horizon. If there's things that you might like to see, might like to talk about, with regards to invasive species on our capital improvement plan, that will be coming up in several months.
The only thing I would say is that if we want to make it a priority, then it's not unattainable fiscally. I mean, I think that, this report says the cost of managing certain invasive species within our community would be unattainable with the current parks budget. Maybe the current, because we haven't dedicated anything to it, but if we decide that's a priority, and we would, as a commission, decide as a group that that's a priority, and then we would recommend something to the council, and they would decide whether it's a priority, and we could set a budget if we want. I mean, there is money, and there's also grants. So I don't have, that, I guess I don't, what I would leave it with is I don't have that concern of it being fiscally impossible. I think we decided it's a priority, and then we find the money.
Okay, great.
I don't know if
So,
that helps.
Yeah, you're thinking about June. That's great.
Yeah, well, there's money there.
Yeah, get those wheels turning now.
Anyone else?
Oh, just thank you. Thank you for the work, for what you and Pat have done. It was great.
Well, and
All right.
Adam and Tony, stay tuned.
Are you, well, I was going to ask if you're looking for more helpers, but I guess we always have that, the open meeting law. I guess.
Yeah, we could have another discussion next month with a fleshed out document.
Yeah, I guess
that,
what I was.
that includes this discussion.
Gotcha. I was wondering if you needed more help, if at all, with personnel wise, or if you're good.
I think we're at the open meeting law.
I don't know,
Adam.
Administrator
think
Clark, are you able to comment on that at all? We've got a body of 7, it's not at 7 or 8, we have a quorum of 4. Wouldn't we be at 3 for?
No, if you have a body of 7, a quorum is 4.
Right,
Yeah.
but to be able to have a group of people to meet on an ad hoc sort of committee, wouldn't we be able to have 3 people?
Yeah, 3 would be fine without open meeting law violation.
I believe the chair can also call a special meeting with 3
Sure.
days' notice.
Yeah, well, yeah, if we wanted to have a special work group on it. So I just wanted, I guess, Mike, I wanted to float out there that awesome work. Don't feel that you need to do it all. If you want help, ask for help, I guess is what I'm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the constraint is, does the commission want to see this in the next month? Or is something more in line with when the Parks Master Plan is coming out acceptable? Because that changes the answer, right?
Yeah, I think close to that master plan is great.
Think there's any
Right.
hurry. Well, I mean, we have CIP considerations, but no, it's not a hurry. at all.
Okay.
No.
Okay, cool.
No, I would rather be methodical personally. Maybe not methodical, but,
We want to do it the right way, right? We want to do it the right way.
yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks for your thoughts. Vito, did you have anything that you wanted to?
I'm just doing a lot of listening right now
Okay,
and
great.
learning. This is my time to just, yeah.
Appreciate that too. Okay. Well, if we are done with that conversation, which I think is, it is a great conversation, and thank you for the public comment as well. We can move on to communications, which, one, looks like, well, we have a few items. Was there city staff that was going to speak on the commission handbook, or is?
No, just a heads up that the commission, or the handbook was built as part of your packet today. If you do need a hard copy of that, you can just email Rebecca. She can make you a hard copy for that. There was an amendment to that was sent out to you today in regards to the CIP. I think she included the 2023 CIP, so you'll see in there now is the, excuse me, the 24 through 2033 CIP and how those items are all laid out in there. So, any questions in regards to the handbook, yeah, please reach out to Rebecca for any questions on that.
I do appreciate that handbook very much. I think it's very useful personally. No. We have Tablin Park as a part of communications. I don't.
So, yes, Tablin Park, I asked that before the next Parks Commission meeting, that our commissioners take a tour of Tablin Park on your own, just to become familiar with the area. You know, some of the items on the CIP and our work plan this year are to discuss some future parking issues there, but we also have for 2025 the playground set as well. So just looking for the commissioners to take a walk through there, become familiar with it, so you can bring some questions, some comments, some suggestions of our play equipment, of our parking issues that we do have there in the future of that park. So, okay.
Great. And we have item C on there as future agenda items. The intent with that is just, I one requested to have that on there just to make sure that we're vocalizing in these meetings what we would like to see on future. Doesn't have to be the next meeting, but future meetings, we'll have to figure out what, what fits and what doesn't. We had a pretty packed, agenda tonight, so it's gonna ebb and flow, that sort of thing. But if anybody has future agenda items that fall within the work plan, you can bring them up if we've got
I don't know if this was on their plan, but to have the planning consultant group just provide a status update.
yeah, okay.
I mean, they started last fall. I think we got a little bit of update about one of the listening sessions, but, and I can't remember exactly where they were, but there must be an appropriate time
Yeah.
between now and when they're supposed to be having the report out in June or July, that we can have a status update.
Do we know, my understanding is that my understanding, I don't think it was gonna be done in June or July. But that aside, the intent was to meet with us, correct? Do we have a date on that?
Yeah, I think it was initially, when it was initially awarded, the contract, it would be about that end of July that they'd bring it to city council. I think with a later start, we are creeping down to that August, September time, but there is a date. I don't know if we actually have that. I know we don't have it written down yet, as far as when they'll actually present to the Parks Commission, but that plan will be presented in front of the Parks Commission, Anna and Josh.
And I think, Hank, too, flip side of that is, they present, but they're looking for your feedback as well.
Yeah.
All our
Would.
feedback, on this. I can speak very quickly to it. I'm on that, he has elected me to be the representative. We've met twice. The last time, we set a fairly concise vision statement and some guiding principles. Actually, they had brought those to us, and we worked on them a little bit. We also did a little bit of workshopping. We got some maps out, and just the advisory council just kind of drew and did Post-it notes about what they knew and what they thought needed to be corrected, what they thought worked well. Just did some scrawling on the maps. So, providing them information is what we did in those two meetings. They've done other work that I can't speak to. Any other future agenda items? I think that's a great one, though, Hank.
Another one, and I just throw this out as a thought, that like when they built this building, they had a groundbreaking ceremony. I think the significance of the new Elmo Pup Park should have some kind of ceremony or kickoff or something. I have no idea how that would happen. But if somebody over the next 5 months could talk to us about some ideas, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, so we've ordered all the items for the pup park already. So once that sign gets delivered, that sign will probably take the longest time, as long as our fencing gets in there. But I would suspect that if they can get going with the early frost getting out, probably be looking at possibly May to have a grand opening with that.
I could see that being a big community event.
With lots of dogs
With lots of dogs.
everywhere, yeah. Okay, note that, and,
You could hire a snow cone business to do some catering for the event if you wanted to.
do you have a snow cone business?
Yes.
We could accept donations for more trees and benches.
All right, so, besides future agenda items, does any commissioners have any other communications they would like to share? Or city staff? Oh,
I
sorry.
guess with future agenda items, I could go back, but I haven't. Was Connor from Washington County speaking to us next month about the county trail
He is, yep.
alignment?
He's
Okay,
scheduled,
great.
he's scheduled to be in the next Parks Commission meeting. yeah.
Okay, so we should also, I'll consider that, I guess.
Okay. Did you have any further communications?
Just a couple things. The pickleball nets have been placed up in Ivywood just due to the warm weather. That's something that staff put up this week, so those are open. If the temperatures do go back the other way, we may consider taking those back down just because the ice and everything does make those heavy, stretch them out. And then we do get, the next thing is complaints that they're not high enough or they're too low. So we will take that into consideration as well. As you know, the ice rink was open, it closed, and was there very open for a very short time. That will be unplugged this week as well to be drained. It will take a while for that ice to be removed from that, but with the 50, possibly 60s as early as next week, we may see pickleball return to that one as soon as the following week as well. So we'll see how that rolls with that as well. So
When were those nets put in? They are in, or when are they going in?
Ivywood is put in already. The ones downtown at Lions Park are not in. I would suspect possibly if all the ice is removed from there, possibly within 2 weeks.
Okay, I'm just making sure, so I know when my phone's gonna ring for me to install mine at my park. So I'm just wondering when I need to be prepared.